Yo, what's up everybody? My name is Tech. Welcome back to another video. Today we are going to be using Umodel to actually export Valorant agents and weapons, as well as texturing them in Blender. So hope this helps you out and stay tuned. All right, so if you're using Umodel, the first thing I recommend is installing Piana, because it'll help you skip a few steps. So I put a link in the description for the GitHub. You got to install .NET as well as Piana, and then you just click install and import it right into Blender. When you enable this, you'll have to select your export path, which is wherever you want maps to go. We're not really dealing with that in this tutorial, but there's also the packs path, which is just your default Valorant content. And this is the same link on everyone's computer, depending on which drive they installed it in. So if we go ahead and press N and go to Piana, on the right side, you'll see a few different tabs: map importer, other, animation tools and settings. For here, we're going to do other, and we're just going to click on the start Umodel button. And this will go ahead and load a Umodel, and it'll immediately input our AES key, as well as just navigate to our Valorant packs folder. Now, if we're trying to import characters, of course, we just go to the characters folder, and we try to find the code name. So up on screen here, we have a list of all of the different characters and their code names. So for this tutorial, we're going to decompile Gekko because it's the most recent one that I've done. And his name on here is Agrobot. So what we can do is just right click on Agrobot and just export the folder content. And then we can pick a place where we want it to export. So I'm just going to find a place here. It's going to go ahead and select folder. And I'm going to change the texture format to PNG. I find it easier to work with, especially for some of the transparent images. Keep these at PSK and this one at PSKX. And we're just going to click OK. So now the entire Gekko folder will export along with all his animations, models, and stuff like that. All right, so here is our Gekko folder that we just exported using Umodel here. And we can see right away we have different parts. So if we go into game, there's characters, we go to Agrobot, and here's where we start to get into the important stuff. So S0 will have the first person, the third person, and the character select model. So depending on which one you want to import, you can pick between these. For us, we're just going to start off with the character select. Here's all of the different character select animations. And then finally, here is the model. All right, well, now that we know where our PSK is located, we can just go ahead and import this into Blender now. So file, import ESK for skeleton mesh, and we can just paste this in here. And we're going to select CS Agrobot S0 skelemesh.psk. And right away, now we have our Gekko model in Blender. Although you'll see here, we don't have any textures. If we go into the shading tab here, we can see that there's nothing. So we can go ahead and click use nodes, and we can see for all the different slots, there really isn't anything here. There's just this principal BSDF. So we can go ahead and do file append, go to the Katuza pack, go into the shader pack, shaders and nodes, shader and nodes pack, node tree, and go ahead and select whichever one we want. I'm going to click the Liberosis Valorant character shader, but we can just shift select all of them in here and go ahead and append. Now that it's here in our shading tab, if we go ahead and click Shift A, go to group, there's all of these different ones here. So we can select Liberosis Valorant character shader, and we can go ahead and delete our principal BSDF and hook this into it. Now, if we go back to our folder here and we go to S0, we have to find all the textures. So these ones are typically found in the third person. So if we go to third person materials, we can see we have 1, 2, 3, and 4 different PNGs. So I'm going to go ahead and drag each one of these into Blender. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Now, all of these PNGs are different things. So for example, this DF is the diffuse map, which we'll need for the regular textures. The MRAE is the metallic, reflection, ambient, occlusion, and emission. Each one of these colors represents a different thing. We have the decal, which is for his tattoos that I'll show you how to do after. So I'll put that to the side. And then of course we have our normal map, which adds bumpiness and roughness. So of course we just take the color from the diffuse, hook that into the diffuse, nice and simple. We take the MRAE and just plug that into the MRAE. And then we just take our normal map and plug that into the normal. And now we have our textured gecko. All right, so one more thing you'll notice is that there are whites in the eyes where there should be ambient occlusion. So what we actually have to do here is click on our TP Core Eye material and go back to shading, click use nodes, and of course we don't see anything here. So what we have to do is go back to our export, which is why I've exported the whole folder, and go back to characters, select core, third person, materials, and scroll down until you see the TP Core Eye DF, which is the eye diffuse. So we can drag this in here, and what we want to do is hook the color into the base color and the alpha into the alpha. And now it will just look all black. So what we have to do here is go in our shading and the TP Core Eye, go to Viewport display and change the blend mode to alpha blend. And now it won't show up, but it'll have your proper ambient occlusion. So now that we're here, we're almost done. It's looking pretty good already. So one thing, of course, is the glass won't work. So one thing with the glass and VFX shaders is that since they're made in Unreal Engine, you can't really copy them over like you can just a texture. So what we can do is just remake this by just deleting this principled BSDF, pressing Shift A, and just type in glass BSDF and just hook that into the surface. And if we see here, it looks pretty good already. There's not much you have to change. If you view it in cycles, it'll even show the blue behind it, just like his regular texture. All right, so one thing you'll notice is that Gekko here doesn't actually have any tattoos. Now, if we go to the data properties here, the object data properties, and we expand this UV map, we can actually see that there's 3 different groups here. So there's UV single, which is just his entire body. There's extra UV S0, which here we can see is like only his arms and neck. And finally, extra SV1 is just his hair up here. Now, we want to put tattoos obviously on his skin. So we'll use the extra UV S0. So how we can do this is we click on our character here. We go to shading. And now that we have this decal that we imported, we can create a new node called a UV map by pressing Shift A and typing in UV map. Here we can hook this UV into the vector and make sure we select that extra UV S0. Now we're gonna have to mix this diffuse because the skin and the tattoos are one. So we can just do Shift A, create a mix RGB here, and hook in the color into color 2. But we can see it's a bit messed up and looks a little bit odd. So we have to hook the alpha channel here into the factor. So now that we do that, these sit perfectly on top of his skin. And this shader has a little bit different values. I prefer like 0.2 for specular, so his entire body isn't so shiny. But just like that, we have our fully textured gecko along with special decals on it too. And it's not too difficult. Of course, now that we have our gecko, we can also apply different animations. So we can do import PSA. We can go to that same part in our character select and just go to animations. And we have to look for which one is his. So all of these ones here, the ABCS, are for his prop. So this is Agrobot, Baby Shark, all these different things, Agrobot character select, but we want character select Agrobot. So we can do idle. And just like that, we have all of our animations able to play. So it's a lot simpler than I first expected when I thought about importing and exporting these different people and setting them up. I would always wait for someone else to do it, but now that I'm armed with this knowledge, it's so much easier to just do it myself. So I guess let's try it with a weapon now. So to start off showing you how to do weapons, I'm going to do the Prime Vandal. I think it's the easiest to show off, and it has a few moving parts that I think are very important. So let's go into Piana and go ahead and start Umodel here. Now, if we go to game, equipables, guns, Since we're going for the prime vandal, it's going to be rifles and AK. You know, the burst is phantom, carbine is bulldog. And we're going to scroll down. There's code names for every single gun that I might put up on screen if I have them. If I don't, you kind of just have to guess or ask around. But I know for a fact that Hype Beast is actually the name for the prime vandal. So let's go ahead and right click on this Hype Beast folder and export folder content. We are going to select our prime vandal folder wherever we want to export it, change the texture format to PNG, and go ahead and just click OK. So here we have our prime vandal. Of course, we're going to go to game, equipables, guns, rifles, AK, Hype Beast, and we're going to go into first person. In models, this is where we're going to actually import all of this. So if we do file import PSK, and we can select the level 2 because I want the higher upgrade level, as well as the magazine. We can import these, and if we just want to go ahead and put the magazine in the right spot, click on the magazine, go to our object constraint properties, add a child of, select the skeleton mesh for this, and just click magazine. It'll be in the right place. If it doesn't go to the right place and you moved it around, you just have to click clear inverse and it'll go to the right spot. All right, so now that we have our prime vandal here, we want to get to texturing. So what we have to do, go to our shading tab and click use nodes. Now we want to import a Valorant shader. So we're going to go file, append, go to our Katuza Valorant pack, go to shader pack, shaders and nodes, the blend file, node tree, and the MRS AEM shader. Now we're going to delete this default principled BSDF, go to Shift A to add something new, go to group, and our new one, our MRS AEM shader. We can hook that into the surface and we can see what it actually affects since it turns green. So this part is going to be a different texture, as well as this and this, which are going to be in our different slots. Now, if we go to our folder here and we go to materials, we can find each one. So first is diffuse, which the diffuse is the whole texture of the gun. I have this plugin here called Node Preview to show you what everything does. Now, if we just hook in this diffuse to the diffuse, in this instance, it's just the color. So once we add everything else, it'll work. Now we have next is our MRS. I believe this is metallic, reflection, and something else. Not entirely sure, but that kind of changes how things are shaded. You can see these are shiny now up here. We also have our normal map, which of course adds depth to our gun and adds bumps. So we can see now there's different bumps in it. And finally, to tie everything together, we have our AEM, which I assume is ambient occlusion, emission, I don't know, something like that. And once we combine all of these, we have this in the right place. Now, you do want to make sure that for the diffuse, you also hook the color into the emission color. It'll just make your life a lot easier in the end, because then you don't have to try to figure out which color is which. Now, of course, this is only part of it, because we also have these little special parts here. Now, for the glass doesn't import properly because it's an Unreal Engine material as opposed to a Blender one. So all we have to do is Shift A and search for glass BSDF and just go ahead and hook this into the surface. If you're using Eevee, you're going to have to go to our render properties, turn on screen space reflections and refraction. For most of the stuff I do, I use cycles, so I don't have to do that, but just so everyone knows. Now, we are also going to do something with the chromas. Now, it's really annoying to have to change all 4 of these every single time you want to do it. I like to just have one blend with all of the different types in it. So what we can do, we can go ahead and select all of this and do Control G, and this will make a group. And this group output is a BSDF. Now, if we use this little arrow here to go back to the parent node tree, we can see this little node group here, and we can just name it default. And this is your default diffuse. And it just makes it a lot easier because it's one output and everything's done for you inside of it. Now, if we go to our materials and we go back and we go to chromas, we can see we also have blue, orange, and yellow. Now in here, these materials are the same as the other one we just did. So the process is going to be exactly the same. So I'm going to go ahead and copy these and paste it here. These are going to be kind of broken, so I'm just going to delete it. And let's go ahead and take the blue ones. So here's our materials. We're going to do the same thing. Let's hook the diffuse into diffuse and emission color. The MRS into MRS. Normal map into normal. And AEM into AEM. Now we're going to go ahead and make another group. Hook the BSDF into the group output. And now we also have our blue one. We can go ahead and rename this blue. Now we're going to do the exact same thing with the remaining two. And this will be yellow. So if we want, all we have to do is just hook these ones in here and it will change the entire thing. Since it's a bit annoying to look at, I like to just make another group and hook all of these in. So we can do this into 1, 2, 3. If we press N, we can go to our group tab and change the outputs. So default, blue, orange, yellow. And now we have our nice little node group here. And all we have to do is just change it if we want a different skin. So it seems complex, but it's actually really simple. Now, one thing that of course we aren't seeing is our lights coming from inside the gun if we actually change our render here. Now, the reason for this is because our emissive inner just simply isn't there. So what you can do for the emission is just go to the inner MI, press Shift A and add an emission. We can make it something like 15 and then just pick a color that's pretty close to the one in game. Or you can even sample it through like an eyedropper tool and it will glow just like the game. Now, of course, if we go, we can see this part isn't glowing either. So if we go back to our shading, we can just copy this emission actually and put it here if we use nodes. And these parts will also glow that same color. And if you want to change this, you know, just you can mess with the hue too once you find something you like and make them yellow. And then if you go back to our main slot, we can just change this to yellow and then it will fit properly. So for those ones, you have to do them a little manually and you can't necessarily do that custom emission texture that I know of, but this is just one way of doing it for each gun. So all you have to do is hook in a different one and change the emissions to whatever you want. Thank you so much for watching. I hope this helped you out. If you have any questions, please leave them in the comments section below and please consider liking and subscribing as it really helps the channel out. If you want any other tutorials, please leave a comment for what you want and I'll try to get to them. And once again, thank you so much for watching and I'll see you guys next time. Peace.